Okay, there we go. That was easy. Okay, I'm gonna start out with the Bondo. Like I said, we're gonna do, or I'm gonna do mixing and whatever right here. And by the time I'm finished explaining it and the fiberglass, you'll actually be able to see the finished product of the Bondo over here. Um, the first thing we'll cover is the safety, the prep, what you kind of need. Um, you'll of course need the Bondo itself, and mine is open, so it's kind of messy. But Bondo body filler. Bondo is really just a brand name. It's a company. Body filler is the actual name for the product, but everybody and their mama calls it Bondo. So if you just go into an automotive store and be like, I need Bondo, they should be able to just be like, oh, okay, let's go get you some. Um, I haven't really ever seen too many other brands of body filler though, so you're probably going to have Bondo body filler. Same with the fiberglass and resin. I've really only seen Bondo brand fiberglass and resin. Yeah, they're both Bondo. Um, so yeah, it'll be easy to spot. I've seen several different colors of the cans. This one's red. I've seen a blue one and a green one. It's all essentially the same for what you're going to use it for. You would only need to nitpick if you were going to use it for what you're supposed to be using it for cars and whatnot, but it does not matter. But whenever you're using it, you're also going to want gloves for sure. I usually use latex gloves because I can kind of use my fingers as tools there, and get some smoothing and into spaces that you couldn't normally get with other things. So latex gloves, if you got just regular work gloves, those will work too, but it's going to cake on and stick on, and it's tough to get off sometimes if you're using like thick work gloves. So I'd suggest going with just the disposable latex ones. Goggles and a mask too. Not so much for the mixing and the application, more for the post work whenever it's cured and you're sanding or cutting pieces out or whatever. That's when it gets to where you're going to sand things down and it's going to turn into dust, and you don't want Bondo dust getting anywhere in your moneymaker. So if you want to use them, I'd suggest using them all the time, but you only really need them for the work after it's cured. And some spatulas or some spreaders or some kind of something to where you're going to be able to spread this Bondo onto whatever. Anything with like a flat surface, not an iPhone. Don't use an iPhone. Just a flat surface so you can scrape it. Most of the time when you use Bondo, it's going to be for filling in cracks or for strengthening or whatever, and in that case you're just going to want to scrape. And flat surfaces, credit cards, business cards, anything you don't want anymore will be good to spread it out. Utility knife, I use a utility knife with Bondo a lot. I said it in that last one, it's always with me because I always use it. It's really good for Bondo. And the kind of in between the curing stages. I'll explain that a little bit later, but it's nice to have. And craft foam. We really only do this for our helmet work with the Halo gear, because there's all kinds of grooves and indentations or whatever. But we have sticky back foam sheets. We get these at Hobby Lobby. They're like 79 cents or something. Yeah, 79 cents for a sheet. It's 8.5 by 11, just like normal business legal paper or whatever. And it's just foam on one side, and it's got an adhesive on the back. You peel it back and it'll stick. And what we'll do with that is cut it into strip. Like say we have a groove that needs to be done, a really long line-shaped groove. We'll cut a strip of this, stick it to the helmet, and spread the Bondo over it. I'll get a little bit more detail with that later on, but this is real fun to work with when you're using Bondo. But yeah, that's about everything you'll need. But it'll kind of vary depending on what job you're trying to actually do with it. Bondo's really used for mainly like smoothing over cracks if there's a crack in something, filling in holes if you've got a casted piece from a member or something that has some air bubbles in it, or some indentations from a bad cast. Then You can smooth it over with that. It works great with a sander. Once it's fully cured, it's perfectly sandable. And it's real easy to do, or to make it work with you. Once it's cured, that it's not some kind of crazy new substance that is super strong or whatever. It's just, you know, a strengthening substance, pretty much, I guess. But no, I was going to tell Judd this too. Judd, if you're watching, you can take pieces that have like walls or whatever, like say this. We've got the chin piece here. Oh no, it's really thin. I'm gonna break it eventually because I'm a Butterfingers. How do I strengthen it? You go on the inside and you can just smooth it in there. And Fiberglass will do this too, but Bondo's good for little parts, like the HGA. I know it's hollow, and sometimes I've seen ones with thin walls on them, and a couple other parts just thinly cast. But you just spread it in, it cures, hardens up. It's just like another wall. And then, like I said, you can sand it down if it's on the inside, so it'll be a smooth surface if you need smooth on the inside, or you can just cake it on and make it an ugly piece of art. So, but yeah, prepping your piece is really easy. It's really just common sense stuff. You want to clean off whatever you're about to put Bondo on. You don't want to Bondo in any kind of trash piece, a leftover Bondo, you know, a piece of a tool or something, whatever could possibly get stuck to whatever you're Bondoing. You don't want it to get under there, because once it cures, the only way to get it out is to sand it down and to break it out. So make sure that whatever you're putting the Bondo on is actually clean itself, and then the surface that you're going to be mixing on needs to be clean too. Normally we use a cutting board. It's a really thin, really cheap cutting board, and it bends really easy. And when Bondo cures, it cures hard. So if you've got something that bends, when you bend it, that Bondo stays hard and kind of pulls up from the cutting board, and we can excuse me, we can reuse it over and over again. But you can use a bunch of different things. Paper plates is really easy, because you can just get rid of them afterwards. You can get 3 or 4 batches out of it and cover the plate up or whatever, and then just throw the plate away, get a new one out, go like that. Or if you have some kind of special Bondo mat at your house that you know about that I don't, you know, awesome, tell me about it so I can tell these people. But really, the main thing that you want and to look for with whatever you're going to be mixing it on is that it can be cleaned off. You want it to be clean every time you do it. Once Bondo hardens, you know, it's hardens, it'll break into flakes if you leave it on your board or whatever, and you don't want old Bondo to mix with new Bondo. It'll kind of mess with the curing process. It'll make it, if you're smoothing, trying to get something real smooth, it'll definitely make that living hell for you if you've got old Bondo chunks stuck in there. So just make sure whatever you're doing can be, or whatever you're using can be cleaned off, and just clean it off each time. But that's about all of the prep. So now I'm going to actually turn the computer around and let you guys see what it looks like when you actually mix this stuff together. And there's 2 different parts. There's the main part. It's like a gray paste. You can kind of see it out here. I'll put it on this paper over here so you can see it too. It's the main part, and then you have the catalyst. Fiberglass or resin works like this also. You have a main part and a catalyst, and it's only a couple of drops on Fiberglass or in Bondo of the little catalyst to whatever you're using on your Bondo. So don't be freaked out when this is, you know, this size compared to it. That's what it looks like. It's really small, but you don't need that much catalyst to start mixing it. Get some out here. Get kind of close to it. You can kind of see it. It's just gray paste. It doesn't do anything by itself except ruin your clothes. So this is another good time to have long sleeve old shirts on, pants that you don't want. There are many times when I have dropped some on me, or put some on a piece and then forgotten about it and put it up against my chest, like trying to maneuver something else in or whatever, and I might actually have some on this shirt. Yep, I have Bondo on this shirt. Great job, Todd. Alright, I got a little bit on this piece of paper here. Now the directions say you want, I can't remember, it's like 1/4 of an inch of the catalyst for every golf ball sized dollop of Bondo. And to me that is a kind of lame explanation, but it's really easy. Just take whatever you got, and normally what I'll do is I'll just cut whatever the amount is in half with a teeny line of the catalyst. The catalyst is red, you can kind of see it coming out there, but there you go, you can kind of see it. It's not much at all. That might actually even be too much, but don't let directions like that kind of throw you off. It's more eye than anything. But actually, this up here. I don't want to get Bondo all over my computer, which I probably will. Right now I'm just using my fingers to mix it, but you're going to want to use something else. Use like a spatula, like I was talking about, something that's going to make sure that all of this catalyst gets mixed in with all of the gray part, all of the base. You don't want to have some Bondo that cures in a batch and some Bondo that doesn't. You're going to get, you know, weird results like that. It's not going to cure properly. All kinds of things. And a little trick for Bondo and for fiberglass, since you have to kind of measure out the catalyst to the main part, is it's always better to over harden than it is to not get it hard at all. If you over harden it, the only thing it's going to do is shorten the work time. You know, once you mix these two things together, I think we talked about some of the stuff like this in the last part, but it's a limited time work thing. It's going to cure between 5 minutes. You'll start seeing the difference, and then about 15 or 20 minutes it'll be unworkable anymore, or it won't be workable anymore, and then about 30 minutes is about when you'll be able to sand it. But you can kind of see it. Sorry I don't have better light, but it's gone from gray to kind of pink just from, you know, mixing in the red with all the gray. It's a good way to know if you've mixed it all. They're very contrasting colors, so you'll be able to see if there's red sticking out or if there's gray, a gray puddle or something. But you can see it's still kind of mushy. I can move it around. It's still basically that liquidy stuff. And when you get fresher Bondo, my Bondo's been open and is kind of old right now, it'll start out more liquidy. So if you need something like that to work with it better, you know, fresh Bondo will be what you need. But yeah, you see, caking up on my gloves, all that kind of stuff. Take this glove off. But that's it. You know, that's mixing Bondo. Now you've got your product to use on whatever. For fixing a cracked piece, Kyle, if you're watching, I think Bondo would be a really good solution for you for your the top by the crank knob, those parts that you scraped off at the Dan Aykroyd meeting. It'd be really good for that. But other than that, just strengthening, main strengthening, and filling in holes and cracks, and you're a Bondo master now. The cool thing about Bondo too is that you can work in between the stages. You can work with it while it's still in its curing stage, you know, while it's kind of hard, kind of not. You can do it while it's fully cured and sanded all down like we were talking about. It does not have a specific, you know, use for it. You can kind of make it work with you. But utility knife, once you get to a certain stage, if you need to cut parts out, if you need to make like lines, square shapes, whatever kind of shapes, and you need to get in there, once it gets about 5-10 minutes in, it's not liquidy anymore, and it's not super hard. So that utility knife is a real nice means to cut into that and kind of get out shapes that you need. You can go in and sand it out later. But I work with the utility knife a lot with the Bondo, just cutting it while it's kind of in the in-between stages. Yeah, so we'll give that, it's already fairly hard, 10 or 15 minutes, I guess, and check back in, and then you'll see what it looks like when it's cured. But that's Bondo. That's all of it. There's not much to it. It's kind of an intimidating subject at first, but it's just mixing two things together and then putting it on and sanding it off. That's it. It will work on top of itself. You can put more Bondo on more Bondo. It'll adhere just fine. Still work the same way. It depends. It depends on how much you've used. If you've used a whole lot, you want to give it a good while to clean. Oh, sorry, these guys can't see the chat. Brock asked how soon until it's ready to paint. But yeah, about 30 or 40 minutes to cure fully. Then you can work with it. If you're sanding it, it's pretty much already ready to be painted. As far as will it take the paint and hold it. But you're more than likely never going to paint it before you sand it. So if you're sanding it and it's doing its job, it's okay to paint after that. And you'll know if it's good to sand just because, well, you know, basically just touch it, and if it's hard, it's good. But also if you try to sand it before it's ready to cure, it'll kind of gum up your sandpaper, kind of leave itself on there, not really sand down well. It's kind of hard to explain, but you'll see what if it's going to be sanded off, it's just going to be straight sanded off. It's not going to gum up your thing, your sander or whatever. But yeah, so we'll give that a little bit. Anybody have any questions about the Bondo besides Brock? Yes, does any type of paint have a bad reaction with Bondo? Not really, no. You know, it's made for the automotive stuff, and of course I suggested the automotive spray paint before anyway. I would always suggest automotive spray paint over regular spray paint. If you use all this stuff, then you'll know what I'm talking about. But get automotive over regular any day anyway. But definitely, if you've got a decent amount of something that has a Bondoed surface on it, then yeah, still get the automotive stuff, and definitely prime too. You're going to want to prime. Get whichever kind you need, filler primer or just color primer, and go to town on it. But it'll still show that pink if you just try to spray paint it normally. So make sure to prime it first. I think that's it, maybe. At least from the people that are actually in the chat room. Okay, well, we'll put this off to the side and let this cure and go back to it. I won't be sanding it in here, sorry. I know you really wanted to see me sand Bondo, but can't happen inside. But next, it's fiberglass and resin. Judd, I hope you're here. But we'll start with just the stuff you need again. Like I said, I've never really seen non-Bondo brand fiberglass or resin. I know it exists. Don't be like, oh, I see this other kind, he's wrong, or oh, what do I do? I'm going to show you what to look for on the package if it's not already Bondo brand, so you won't get confused. But with resin and fiberglass, it's several different parts. You have the actual fiberglass cloth or the mat. There's two different kinds. I'll go over those in a sec. And then you've got your resin, which actually comes with that catalyst, similar to Bondo. This is fresh. I just opened this for the first time, but it's usually clear. And with Bondo and fiberglass resin both, you can buy the catalyst separately. So if you run out and you've over-hardened, or for whatever reason you just run out, this and the Bondo catalyst can be bought separately. It's like $2-3 maybe for an extra one. So don't fear. But this is a two-parter by itself. You know, you've got to do with this like you did with the Bondo and mix these together, and then you have to mix these together. So it's a little bit more not complicated, but time-involved process. But it's still fairly easy. And with the fiberglass itself, you can get fiberglass cloth or fiberglass mat, and it's going to be it's just gonna depend on the job that you need. If you're just doing some kind of big surface, like for big flat objects, I can't even think of an example right now. You're gonna want cloth. This is the cloth. It's kind of shiny, kind of smooth to the touch. Once you see these two in person, you'll be able to be like, oh, okay, I see what he's talking about. But the cloth doesn't really get into details very well. It's just going to be for really general shape stuff, boxes, you know, all that kind of stuff. And the mat will be for when you need to get into deep curves or into weirdly shaped things. For a proton pack, you might actually want to mix these two because you've got a wide open surface in the middle of the pack, but then on the outside of the shell, you've got all kinds of nooks and crannies that'll go in there. So mat for the inside, cloth for the inside, mat for the outside. But it just depends. It just depends. And if anybody's got any questions about that stuff now or later, just chat it up. The cloth is also a lot less messy. The mat is, it turns into the strands easier. It loses its kind of integrity out of the package faster than mat or than cloth. I always get them confused. I have to actually look at the package each time, so you're gonna have to bear with me. I use it all the time, and I still don't have them memorized. But with both of them, they're gonna come in big packages, you know, big sheets of stuff, and this is not even unfolded all the way. It's a whole lot with the mat and with the cloth. To start it out with, you're just going to see what you're trying to do, how big the item is you're trying to get, fiberglass and everything, and then you'll know what you need to start doing with the big mats. Usually, we just cut it into strips, just depending on what we have. Different size strips. No funny shapes or anything, just strips. You just cut it down. Once this is actually in the curing process, you know, you can layer it on top of each other. But yeah, you're just gonna need to get it down to where it's not a huge mat and it's in a workable kind of size and position for you. Normal scissors will cut it. Whenever you're working with any of this fiberglass or resin stuff, I'd say keep pretty much all of your safety gear going, especially if you're working with the other kind than this. With the mat, since it does fall apart easier, it starts to go all over the place more. There's already fumes and stuff from the fiberglass resin, so just keep it all handy. You know, always wear gloves. When you're working with this to begin with, I'd suggest like thicker utility gloves, and then when you're actually applying the resin to the fiberglass, I'd probably suggest latex gloves. But you don't want any piece of the fiberglass mat kind of getting into your skin or anything. So always gloves, always. I'd say latex for working with it. But it's got a similar prep than to the Bondo. You want everything cleaned. You want whatever you're going to be mixing the resin in to be cleaned. You want whatever you're going to be applying it to be cleaned. 99% of the time this is going to be going on the inside, so it's not that big of a deal if you have little chunks of stuff or whatever inside your shell or whatever you're trying to fiberglass, but you still don't want it in there. You still just don't. It's always more harm than good to leave something in there. But yeah, just clean it all off and get it ready. Mixing the resin. It's got weird measurements also, but it's a little bit more specific than a line for a golf ball. You're supposed to use 12 drops of the catalyst, the little tiny bottle, for every ounce of the resin that you use. 12 drops to an ounce. And you'll mix it in. Like I said, if you don't, you're never going to measure out an ounce exactly. Even if you have a measuring cup, the resin itself is thick, so it's going to stick to the inside of whatever you're pouring it in. So you'll never have an exact ounce, and you'll never get exactly 12 drops out of this. But like I said with the Bondo, it's always better to over-harden than it is to have it not harden enough, especially with the fiberglass, because that's what you need it for, is to harden. You don't want this cloth just sitting in your piece. It does absolutely nothing. It's just like putting a t-shirt in there. You want it to harden into its final state. You know, Bondo, I said, if you over harden, it'll just cure faster. It's the same for this stuff. Once you have the resin and the catalyst mixed, if you have too much hardener in there, it's just going to turn into jelly faster and become unusable. But you definitely would rather to just throw out some resin than to have a piece in there that is not curing all the way because it didn't receive enough hardener in there. Mixing it, we use these little Ziploc bowls. They're kind of like Tupperware, a little bit cheaper. Sorry, Ziploc, but they're easy to bend. And once this resin and the hardener actually cures in here, it kind of makes just like a hard surface the shape of the bowl, you know. And whenever you bend it or push it in, it's gonna crack it up, make it flake into pieces, and you'll be able to do like I was talking about with Bondo and just separate the two. And normally resin cleans up a lot easier than Bondo, so you can definitely use the same mixing container over and over again if you want. Especially if you have something like this. We went like a year and a half, 2 years with the same bowl, and it didn't hurt it to bend it that much, and the resin didn't eat through the plastic or anything. So, but it's really up to you. You can use disposable bowls, but just make sure that you're going to be able to mix in everything that you need, and then still get to it. I know that kind of doesn't make sense at the moment, but for the application, there's going to be 2 different methods that you can use, and it'll make a little bit more sense when I start getting into them. But yes, 1 ounce of this, 12 drops of the hardener. This comes out as kind of like a amberish, kind of brownish liquid. It doesn't change color with the hardener, so you're not going to know for sure just by looking at it if it's ready to go. So you're just going to want to make sure that you're mixing it all in there really well, so that hardener spreads out evenly in there. And you want to use something that's not going to soak up any kind of liquids to stir this stuff with. Like wooden handle stuff, don't use wooden stuff like popsicle sticks or anything. A lot of the cheaper ones will suck up the hardener while it's going in there, while it's stirring it around, and keep it in the mixing tool. And then it won't be able to be spread out throughout the rest of it like that, and it won't cure right. So just make sure whatever you're using is not going to soak up anything. I know it's kind of common sense already, but with this kind of stuff, you have to kind of go the extra step and make sure, you know, is it going to soak up anything at all? Is there any chance of it? No, okay, it's okay to mix the resin with this then. So you have your strips cut of the mat for whatever you're doing, and you've got your ounce or however much poured, and you're about to mix. How do I apply it? There's 2 different ways that we use. I'm sure there's a couple of others. If anybody has any, chime in and let me know. But there's 2 different ones. Yes, old metal spoons, Brock said. It's a really good one. Metal stuff, if you just got metal scrap stuff laying around, all you're doing is mixing. So you don't need any kind of super special $90 million Bondo brand mixing device. Just make sure it's not going to take up that hardener. But yes, 2 ways to apply it. One is you can paint the resin onto the fiberglass, and it's pretty literal. You've got, you know, your liquid bowl of resin. You just take a paintbrush, and you're always going to want to, regardless of what method you get, you're always going to want it to kind of stick to where it's going immediately, and then is when you're going to want to worry about smoothing it all over, making sure everything's covered with resin, etc. So just dab a few drops of resin on one side and stick it to whatever. You know, it's going to be laying down, so stick it to whatever, and it'll kind of adhere itself so it's not still sticking to your fingers or anything. But then from there, it's just like it says, you just paint it on. You can use foam brushes or regular paintbrush type brushes. These are the foam brushes, the ones with the foam heads, and then everybody knows what the bristle brushes look like. We we read that you can reuse brushes if you wash them out very well, but that became a lie to us. We never really had a brush that did not get ruined by the resin after one batch. So I definitely suggest going to like Hobby Lobby or Big Lots or some dollar store or something, and just getting a big bag of cheap paintbrushes. That way you don't have to worry about all that extra cleanup. You might actually wind up making more of a mess trying to clean a brush than you would to just, spend the $5, get 20 brushes, and just throw them away after you're done. It is much more of a hassle to try to clean the brushes. But yeah, you just paint it all on. And the key thing, with whichever method that you're using to do this, the key thing is make sure that all of it's covered. This will kind of be a little bit easier to know when you see it in person, but the cloth is white. This comes out as like a brown liquid, so it'll kind of turn into like a yellowish, brownish kind of color on the cloth or the mat when it's covered with the resin. And if it's not, it's going to stay that original white. So it'll kind of be easy to spot, but make sure you get everything covered, everything. If there's a space on there that doesn't get touched with resin, then that space is going to stay cloth or matte. It's not going to turn into what you need it to. So yeah, you can just paint it all over. Use several brushes, whatever you want to do, but it's real simple. Put it on, brush it, it'll stick down by itself. Sometimes you'll have things try to stick to the brush or stick to your fingers, but you just got to maneuver it a little bit. It starts to get really sticky, but nothing you won't be able to handle really. If you're using the other kind, the matte, like I said, it gets real messy especially when you start getting to this stage, when you start working with it with the resin. A little trick that we have is we have just some kind of trash piece of paper or just like a junk item or something always on the table when we're resining, and that way when these strands start collecting on your fingers and everything, you have something to kind of wipe them off on and have not a clean glove anymore, but a less fiberglass thick glove. But yeah, you just want to get it off there. You can change gloves, but whenever you're working with it, you want to use as much of the time actually working with it after it's mixed as you can. And if you're changing gloves, I know that kind of seems like a simple procedure for some people, but when you're out there doing it, it could get hairy, some stuff sticking to you, stuff getting on you. So yeah, I just suggest trying to pull it off and get it on some other trash piece of whatever that you can just throw away afterwards too. The other method is kind of a dip method. Instead of taking the strip and putting it on and painting the resin on from there, you actually dip it into your bowl. I don't really have any strips cut, so I can't demonstrate it a lot. But you have your bowl, and you have your cloth. It's filled up in there. Just dip it in. I can't really get a bend with it, so I can't. Yeah, I got $1. That'll work. You got your strip. You just dip it in. Just cover that whole back. And whenever you're doing it this way, normally you'll get enough on that one side to kind of push through and soak the whole thing anyway. And this is the way we mainly do it, is the dip method. It's a lot faster. There's less tools that you have to keep up with. You don't have to fiddle with a paintbrush or anything. It's just you going, and whenever you dip it in, like I said, you usually get enough on that first dip to cover it. So it's just dip, press, done, next strip, dip, press, done, next strip, dip, press, done. But those are the two methods that we normally use. Like I said, if any of you guys have any other ones, tell me. If it's in the chat right here, I'll let all these other people know. But yeah, main thing for either method, make sure it's covered. Make sure it's covered. And you can, this is like Bondo, you can layer it on top of itself. As a matter of fact, you're probably going to want to do it at least 2 layers on anything that you do. and just layer it on top of each other. You can do the same method. You don't have to change your application method because there's already fiberglass down. It's the exact same thing over and over again. Rinse and repeat over and over again, and it'll do just fine. But this kind of Bondo too, but this starts adding a lot of weight to your stuff too whenever you get a lot of things fiberglass. So if you've got a shell or something that you're going to be doing this to, it's going to take up or add on a decent amount of weight. Not a whole lot, but you're going to notice the difference between a fiberglass piece and a non-fiberglass piece. But that's good. That's good. Heavy means it's strong. So it's kind of like a win-lose kind of sacrifice situation. Whenever you're actually applying it, the rules normally are if you're doing something that has like a wall or whatever edge, and you need it strengthened all the way to that edge, generally you want to let it. Brock just asked where the best place to buy these supplies are. I've gotten all my stuff at automotive shops until tonight. As a matter of fact, I actually found out that Home Depot has fiberglass and resin. I'm pretty sure I saw Bondo there too. But if Home Depot doesn't, any automotive shop will. Any automotive shop. This is stuff that people use all the time on cars. So any automotive shop should have it. And if not them, then just check Lowe's or Home Depot. But yeah, so you've got your edge or whatever that you're trying to strengthen all the way out to. Generally, you want to go over the edge. You don't want to wrap it around or anything and put it on the outside of the piece because it's going to make it weird looking. But just let it sit, kind of floating over the edge. You can't see that; it's not as clear. Let's do this close up. You've got an edge of an item that you want to do. Let it kind of overlap on the edge. If the overlapping part isn't cured all the way, that's fine because this is getting rid of anyway. You're going to be getting rid of this anyway. But when you overlap it, you kind of have not more of an area to work with, but you'd much rather have fiberglass to trim off than you would to have more to put on or to have a spot that's not hardened all the way because it didn't reach that edge. So always let it kind of go over the edge, and you'll be able to make sure that it's 100% reinforced that way. But like I said, it's not really necessary if you're just doing the inside of a piece or whatever. It's just whatever you want to do. Once it hardens, it's easy to take care of too. It's really dangerous when it hardens though. You're gonna want thick utility gloves for when you're working with it afterwards, and you're definitely gonna want your gloves, goggles, the whole 9 yards for all of this. It turns hard, and especially with the mat where it comes up in the little strands, any little strand that's sticking up that gets resin on it, that's now a little spear that you're going to spear your fingers on at least once or twice. So make sure that when you're working with it after it's cured, thick gloves, definitely suggest them. Brock asked what the curing time is for it. It's about the same as Bondo, about the same, about 30 minutes, but it really just depends on how much you're doing at one time. But it's real easy to know when it's done because it'll be hard. The resin actually heats up. Actually, I think Bondo does too. Heats up and is hot to the touch whenever it's mixed. So also whenever it's cool is a good way to know that it's cured completely. And just give it the knock test. If you can knock on it and it's hard, it's not giving way with the cloth or anything, you're good. It's good to be worked with from there. Once it is done, if you have some overlap that you need to take care of, just some random things here and there, you can cut this stuff with anything from scissors up to Dremel or a saw or whatever you want to use. It just depends on the job and how thick the fiberglass is that you're needing to cut. Just a couple of strands, you can just clip them with scissors. Most of the time, you're probably going to want to use a Dremel, though. We kind of went over those in the last one. I can't find mine. It was down here. A Dremel with a saw tip. It'll cut right through it, and you can get in really close with a Dremel, especially if you have one of those like a hand router for it. Most of the times you can't really get into what you're going to want to fiberglass on the prop side of things with like a saw or anything. So scissors, utility knife, Dremel will work with it. A very important thing that I almost left out. This stuff it puts off a lot of fumes when you're working with the resin. Whether it's mixed or not, just the resin itself puts out a lot of fumes. This is a job that I would definitely suggest using a respirator for. They're $20, $30 maybe. You all know what they look like. They're just face masks that clean your air. You don't want to be sitting there in these fumes for really any amount of time. It's already damaging, but then you breathe in these fumes for a few minutes straight and it'll start getting to you. You'll start getting dizzy. You'll start wanting to stop. So make sure that you have a respirator. If you don't have a respirator and just have the masks, that's fine too. Just make sure whenever you're doing it, it's completely open wherever you're doing it. Outside on a table, really that's it. That's the only time that I would use a mask, is that if it's outside on a table. Even if it's in your garage and your garage has 90 million doors and windows, I don't care. It's gonna get to you. Use a respirator if you've got it. Invest in one if you don't. And if you can't, then use those other masks in a completely open area. Do not do this inside. Do not do this in a stuffy area. Bondo is okay. It doesn't have it. You can kind of smell it, but it is not as powerful as this stuff by far. So make sure that you have a respirator or some kind of way to keep it from getting into your nose and mouth. It's just common sense. But yeah, that is about it. And this Bondo, it's not completely cured, but you can kind of see it. You can't really get a feel for it, but it's harder. It's only been like 20-25 minutes. I could probably be saying that right now if it wasn't on a piece of paper. So there you go. There's your hardened Bondo. I'm sorry we couldn't really do hands-on with fiberglass. It's still raining out here, and I just can't. We can't do it in the rain. It messes it up. So sorry. Maybe in another one later on, or at a workshop, I can bring some of this up and we can fool around with it. But for now, you're just gonna have to deal with me instructing you, which should be okay. I hope I don't kill anybody in the process. Knock on wood. So yeah, there we go. Does anybody have any fiberglass or resin questions? I hate the delay. Brock's good. Airwolf, are you good? Is there the only other one in the chat? Okay. The only guys in the chat don't have questions, so that means it's over now. Goose, if you're watching, my webs are made of hot glue. So there you go. And I can't tell you where babies come from. That's a job for your mom and dad. Those were the only other questions I saw on the thread. Remember, if you guys have other questions after this or before any other ones, just go to that thread that Brock's got posted up and post your questions, and I'll answer them. And like I said, you can talk to me anytime, anywhere on any of the internet stuff I'm on, Facebook, Alabama Ghostbusters, GB Fans, RPF, any of that stuff. So if there was anything that you did not get a chance to see, or you joined in late or whatever, don't understand completely, just post it on up and we'll get it answered. So yeah, that is it for number 3. Is this number 3? I think it's number 3. Good job. This is going to be stored too, so if you guys need to go back and rewatch anything, you just got to go to our Ustream account, and we haven't really poked around. I don't know where it is for sure, but this gets stored on some sort of server or file or something. But you can go back and review it. So yeah. Okay, Brock says it's number 2. Good number 2. There we go. Yeah, go ask questions. I'll answer them.